Oak Cliff helped shape the way Texas was painted, and most people have no idea. Long before Oak Cliff became known for Bishop Arts, old houses, and neighborhood charm, it was a home to Frank Reaugh, one of the most important painters in Texas history. This isn't just where he lived, but it's also where he worked, taught, and built a studio. Reaugh became known for his glowing pastels of longhorns, prairie light, and enormous Texas skies, images that help define how our generation pictures the Texas landscape. He also helped start the Dallas Art Institute and trained a generation of artists right here in Oak Cliff. Today, most people don't connect Oak Cliff with that kind of legacy, but for a time, this neighborhood was part of something much bigger, the story of how Texas learned to see itself. Welcome to the Hidden City Podcast. I'm Grant.
And I'm Doug, and we're here to share some of the incredible stories and people from Oak Cliff that you might not know.
We're going to sit down with some of the visionaries, craftsmen, and business owners who have shaped Oak Cliff into what it is today.
Oak Cliff is on the south bank of the Trinity River, a few miles south of downtown Dallas. While technically it was part of Dallas, it was its own city for a long time, and it still has that independent spirit.
We'll dive into the history and the spirit of this place, exploring the different challenges and successes that defined it.
This is The Hidden City, a podcast about the people and the stories that make Oak Cliff extraordinary. Most people don't think of painters when they think about Oak Cliff. They think about Bishop Arts. They think about streetcars, maybe they think about old houses or new restaurants, or the general feeling of the neighborhood, but not painters, and definitely not someone who helped define how Texas itself would be seen.
But for a stretch of time, one of the most important artists in Texas lived right here in Oak Cliff. Not just lived here, but worked here, taught here, built a studio here, and from that place, he helped shape an entire way of seeing the Texas landscape.
His name was Frank Reaugh. And if you've ever seen a soft, glowing pastel of longhorns moving across an open prairie, or a sky that feels bigger than it should, there's a good chance that you've seen something influenced by him.
Today, we want to tell you the story of Frank Reaugh, the Dean of Texas Painters, how he became one of the defining painters of Texas, how he helped start the Dallas Art Institute, how he trained a generation of artists, and how for a while, Oak Cliff became a kind of quiet center for all of it.
Frank Reaugh was born in Illinois in 1860, and his family moved to Texas when he was still young. He did not come here later in life looking for material to paint, because Texas was already part of the world for him in the beginning. He grew up seeing a version of the state that was still open, still developing, and still far removed from the Dallas most people know today.
Texas in that period was a very different place. There were long stretches of open land, small settlements, it was kind of rough travel, and very little of what we would call cultural infrastructure. It was not the kind of setting where people would have expected an important art career to take shape, especially one that would help define how the state saw itself.
And that is what makes Reaugh stand out. He wasn't entering some established Texas art tradition with a clear path already laid out for him. He was working in a place that had not really been fully interpreted on canvas, at least not in the way that he would end up doing it. What drew him in was the landscape itself, and over time, that became the center of his work.
Reaugh keeps coming back to the same subjects, but he never is really doing the same thing. He's looking at the plains, the sky, the light, the weather, the distance, and the way all of it changes depending on the hour or the season. He's not treating the land like a backdrop for something else. He is making the land the subject.
What Reaugh saw in Texas was something a lot of people living here probably did not stop to think about in those terms. He saw the beauty in the openness, in the quiet, and in the scale of it. He paid close attention to the way light moved across the ground and the way the sky could completely shape a scene. His work helped turn the Texas landscape into something people could look at, not just as land, but as something worth studying and preserving.
He was not just painting nice views of the countryside, he was helping create one of the earliest visual records of what this place looked and felt like. A lot of the imagery people now connect with Texas was being shaped by artists like Reaugh, who took the landscape seriously enough to make it the focus of a lifetime of work.
Reaugh is best known for working in pastels, which is probably not what most people expect when they think about landscape art. Most people picture oil paintings when they hear the phrase. They think of something large, formal, and built in heavy layers, the kind of work that feels slow and permanent.
Pastels gave him something different. They let him work faster, respond more directly, and stay close to what he was actually seeing in front of him. The medium fit the way he worked because he was trying to catch a moment while it was still there, before the light changed or the whole scene started to look different.
And that really gets at how he approached the landscape. He was not trying to sit in a studio to reconstruct Texas from memory. He was traveling through it, watching it, sketching it as he went. He spent time on trains, out in the countryside, and in open stretches of land where he could study the scene directly.
One of the best details about Reaugh is that he made these sketching trips across Texas and turned travel into part of his process. He moved through the state by rail, stopped along the way, and captured what he saw in real time. That gave his work a kind of immediacy, because he was not inventing these scenes later, he was responding to the landscape while he was still in them.
And a lot of those scenes include longhorn cattle, which became one of the images people most associate him with. What stands out is that he was not treating them in some exaggerated or theatrical way. He was not trying to turn every scene into a frontier spectacle. He painted them as part of the land, as something naturally belonging to that environment.
It really grounded his work. He was less interested in drama than he was in atmosphere. You notice the dust, the distance, the light, and the way the land stretched outward. The subjects are important, but they're always tied to the larger setting around them.
And more than anything else, you notice the sky. It keeps showing up again and again in his work. And after a while, you realize it's almost the main subject. The land is there, the cattle are there, but the sky is what gives the scene its real scale, its mood, and really its whole sense of place.
That's probably one of the clearest ways to understand what made Reaugh different. He understood that in Texas, the sky is not just background, it shapes everything below it. He kept returning to that idea in his work, and it became one of the defining parts of how he painted the state.
Eventually, Reaugh settles in Dallas, and that is where his career starts to take on a different shape. Up to that point, he's known mainly for the work itself and for the way he's studying the Texas landscape. Once he is in Dallas, he's still making art, but he is also becoming part of something larger that is starting to form around him.
He ends up as one of the central figures in the early Dallas art world. Even though calling it an art world at that point might be giving it too much credit, there were artists here and there was interest, but it was still loose, small, and pretty undeveloped compared to the older cities that already had established schools. There were no really established museums, patrons just yet.
Dallas was still figuring out what kind of city it wanted to be. It was growing up fast, building institutions, and trying to define itself, but art was not yet at the center of that story. This was not a place with that kind of reputation that would automatically attract painters or support strong cultural scenes like that. A lot of that still had to be built.
And Reaugh becomes one of the people helping build it. He was not only producing work that people respected, but he was also teaching, organizing, and encouraging other artists. He gave younger artists an example to follow, and he helped create a sense of that serious artistic work could happen here in Dallas.
That includes his role in helping establish what became the Dallas Art Institute, which was important because it gave some of the structure to a scene that had mostly been informal before then. Once there's an institution, even a small one, people have a place to study, share work, and start taking the whole thing more seriously.
That's usually how momentum starts. You have a few committed people, then a place for them to gather, then students, then exhibitions, then a sense that something real is taking shape. Reaugh was one of the people pushing Dallas in that direction at the time, but it still had a long way to go.
What makes him interesting in that setting is that he brings both credibility and consistency. He already had a body of work, he already has a point of view, and he is committed enough to stay involved. That kind of presence can do a lot in a young city because it helps turn scattered interest into an actual community.
So when people talk about Reaugh as an important Texas painter, that is only part of the story. He also helped lay some of the groundwork for the art culture that Dallas would keep building in the years that followed.
This is where Oak Cliff starts to become a real part of the story. Reaugh builds a studio here, and it is not just some spare workspace where he happened to paint. It was a space designed around the kind of work he wanted to do, with attention to the light, room to work, the ability to bring students into it. And that studio says a lot about where he was in his career, because by that point, it was not only making art, he was creating an environment around it.
And Oak Cliff made a lot of sense for that. At the time, it still had a little more separation from downtown Dallas. It was quieter and had more open space. It had room for somebody to build something specific and work in a setting that did not feel as crowded or hurried. And for an artist, that was probably part of the appeal.
It also fits the kind of person Reaugh seemed to have been. He cared about observation, about light, about being able to look closely around the world around him. Oak Cliff gave him a place where he could do that while still being close enough to Dallas, to be part of the growing cultural life. So the studio becomes more than just a building. It becomes one of those places where his work and his influence really take shape together.
So once he had that space, teaching became a much bigger part of his story. Reaugh was not just a painter working in isolation. He was bringing students in, showing them how to do landscapes, how to pay attention to the atmosphere, and how to take Texas seriously as the subject. He was shaping artists in a direct way, not just through paintings people might later see in a gallery.
And a lot of important Texas artists came through that orbit. People like Alexandre Hogue and Jerry Bywaters are part of the next generation, and Reaugh helps form the environment they are learning in. That kind of influence can be hard to measure because it does not always show up in a single painting or a single event. It moves through teaching, examples, and repetition. It moves through the habits of an artist passed on from somebody else.
So a big part of Reaugh's legacy is not only the work he made himself, but the way he helped other artists learn how to see. Even when people do not know his name, they may still be looking at Texas art that came out of the tradition he helped shape. His studio in Oak Cliff becomes one of the places where that influence spreads, which makes it one of the most important local pieces of the whole story.
That is why the Oak Cliff connection is more than just a biographical detail. It is not only that he lived here, it is that he built a place here, worked here, and taught here. And from that place, he helped shape the artists who would carry on Texas art forward.
One of the things that stands out about Reaugh is that he was not trying to turn Texas into a legend. He was not painting it as some larger-than-life frontier story or trying to make it every scene feel heroic. A lot of his work feels grounded in the real place that was in front of him.
He was observing it closely, and that is a very different approach. It sounds simple, but it usually takes more discipline to notice ordinary things than it does to dramatize them. Anyone can exaggerate a scene. Paying attention is harder.
Because attention means waiting long enough to notice small changes. It means watching the light shift across the field, seeing weather move in, or noticing how cattle spread out across an open land. Those are quieter moments, but they're the kind of moments he kept returning to.
And then he had to translate that into something people would still want to look at. That is where the skill comes in. He could take scenes that might seem uneventful at first glance and give them mood, scale, and presence.
In doing that, he helped shape a visual language for Texas. He was not only showing what the state could look like, he was showing how it felt to stand in it, move through it, and experience that sense of distance and openness.
I think one of the most interesting parts of the story is how understated the Oak Cliff connection really is. It is not the first thing people mention when they talk about the Texas art history, and it is easy to overlook if you're only looking for major landmarks or famous institutions.
Yeah, it's not flashy, and it's not the kind of story that announces itself. There's no giant monument attached to it, and there's no one headline moment that everyone remembers either.
But for a meaningful stretch of time, you have an important artist living here, working here, teaching here, and influencing younger artists from here. That gives Oak Cliff a real place in the story, even if it had happened in a quieter way.
Which means Oak Cliff becomes part of the foundation of Texas art. It is not the only place where that history was happening, but it is clearly one of them. Important work and important teaching were taking place here.
Sometimes the most significant things are not the loudest things. They happen in the ordinary neighborhoods, in working studios, and in places where people pass every day without realizing that what once happened there.
It is interesting that Reaugh is not more widely known today, especially when you look at how much influence he had.
Part of that may be the medium that he worked in. Pastels have never carried the same public reputation as large oil paintings, even though they can be just as skillful and expressive.
Part of it may also be geography. Dallas was still developing as a cultural center, and it did not have the same national art reputation that cities on the East Coast or West Coast already had.
And part of it might be simply personality. Reaugh does not come across as someone who's trying to turn himself into a public figure. He seems so much more focused on the work, the teaching, and the process than on building fame around his own name.
That sometimes happens in history. The people who shaped a field are not always the people who become the most famous later on.
The story of Frank Reaugh is easy to miss because it does not center around one dramatic event or a famous landmark. It is a quieter story than that.
It's a story about observation and patience. It's about paying attention to a place long enough that you begin to understand it differently and see value in things other people often overlook.
And it is also a local story. It runs through Dallas, and for an important part of his life, it runs directly through Oak Cliff.
So the next time you see a wide Texas sky or stretch of land that feels bigger than expected, it may be worth remembering that someone once tried to capture that exact feeling and preserve it.
And for a while, he was doing that work right here in Oak Cliff. Dude, Frank
Reaugh.
That guy is amazing. I feel like so many people don't know about him in Oak Cliff, or, how many people know about a lot of painters, but he's ours. He's an Oak Cliff painter.
He's not just any painter too. I think we try to capture this in the story, but he's a legend. I mean, like his artwork is truly impossible to get your hands on.
Yeah.
And he also just like created a whole look and feel of Texas that I think people like imitated for up until the present day afterwards. And so I just always think of this one image of him with his art
easel,
and he's standing in the middle of this field basically, and just a cool iconic story of a guy who lived here.
Yeah, he's not, and he wasn't like flashy. Like I think that's also something that's kind of fun, is he was just like dedicated and did great work, and also communal, like in a sense of like he's going to collaborate with people. He's going to bring people in. It's actually the place, his studio is by Lake Cliff. Have you ever been by
No, I haven't been over there.
You can still see the building.
Really?
Yeah. The building's like at the corner over in that area. And I actually went in it once, and it was like tall and grand, and like there was for sure light in it that's like just coming in. So
that's cool.
It was like a video studio now or something like that. But
we've talked about that on other episodes too, just the legacy of art in Oak Cliff, and how there was, I think, 4 real artists that like put it on the national scale in some ways. And I just think about how even Bishop Arts District being a name, like there's something about...
There used to be artists there that were just like studioing there.
And he was one of the earliest of those artists in this area that kind of infused that into the DNA. I always love I think, and this maybe isn't even a real nickname, but I feel like I've heard it before, that he was the Longhorn Leonardo.
Yes,
and I've always loved that because he has all these amazing Longhorn paintings.
And he's Texas. Like it's like when you think of Texas culture, or like people who have created out of Texas, like it's pretty awesome that this person came out of like there's so many people creating stuff about Texas, and Texas is such a massive, I mean, we're even this John Flaming painting that's by us, sometimes seen in the podcast studio. It's like, here's someone who's making art from this area and these people in this culture. I think he's one of the originals. It's pretty cool.
For sure. I always think when I think of Texas, I think of the big Texas skies.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts.
Are like, signature things you see in Texas as natural landscape, and just those wide open areas and the massive clouds in the sky. And he captured that stuff really well.
I think I actually... there's other people like that have been drawn to. I think of West Texas a lot when I think of the big skies and landscapes kind of stuff, and being in the city, or kind of you still see it, but I feel that when I'm out there. And it's like who is it? Martha. That was who's the person? What's the group that's out there? What is that? Wow. Person who came from New York. We'll have to. I mean, it's Donald Judd. That's who it is. Yeah. No, I think of Donald Judd. Like, it's the story is like, hey, he was drawn to the openness in the Texas sky, and I'm like, oh, this is another, like, after being in New York City, or like being at these galleries in these cramped places. There's something that like people have been drawn to that is being offered here. Also, it's hilarious that we're like, our sky's the special thing, but it kind of, you feel it, like you see it, like there's something to it. So
especially like you said in West Texas, where you get this wide open, flat land. It really, it's
cool.
It's really something
cool to know that he traveled so much to different places to capture kind of this pre-built Texas of sorts that.
And often by train, he was just fighting his way. He probably saw a wild version of Texas, when he was going around it. And you see that in his art. I think about his legacy, and I think about, what art is being made today in Oak Cliff that is going to, in 100 years, be talked about on a podcast. I think Sarah Nystrom's stuff that she makes,
jumps out for sure.
She's created some amazing stuff, but it's fun to think about, this legacy of artists is still well
even pastels
alive today.
And different things that you have a bunch of people that are drawn to this neighborhood, and he's kind of like one of those first ones that did it. So no, I love it. Frank Ray is amazing. People need to know more about Frank.
Go enjoy his art.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can find it in an art gallery, and also just go look at it online. It's pretty awesome. So thanks for listening to this episode.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Hidden City. We hope you discovered something about Oak Cliff that you didn't know. If you enjoyed the show, I hope you subscribe to it on YouTube and then follow us on any of the podcasting platforms. Also, if you enjoyed it, please share with a friend, and thanks so much for tuning in.